USMLE. It is basically a short form for United States Medical Licensing Exam. The name USMLE is for a set of exams, but people use it for the whole process. You might have heard of this term from your seniors or batchmates or even your relatives. Like they say stuff like, why don't you try out USMLE? Doctors have a bright future in the US, you'll be rich, etc. etc. You might have heard of the term, but why is this term so famous? Like, what does USMLE have to do with being a doctor in the US? It is because no matter where you have studied your MBBS or medical school, from around the world, you need to clear the whole process, get into residency, and complete it in order to get license and practice in the US. Even the medical students of the US aren't allowed to practice their specialty on their own unless they have been through the whole residency. Before we get into the process, I'll explain a few words that people get confused with. Let me clear them out first. These are not official definitions of the terms, by the way. But yeah. The first term, residency. Residency is nothing but PG or post graduation. For those who don't know, PGs are also called residents. You might have seen it on their scrubs or outside their cabins, etc. etc. But both are basically the same thing, residency and PG. Now, the second term, foreign medical graduates, FMGs. This term is pretty self-explanatory. In this process, it refers to every medical graduate who has acquired their basic medical degree, like our MBBS degree, from any medical school outside the US. These people are called foreign medical graduates or international medical graduates. So, all of us are foreign medical graduates or international medical graduates, IMGs. The third term, ECFMG, it stands for Educational Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates. Since there are a lot of people who want to become a doctor in the US, and also since there is a shortage of doctors in the US too, the government of US itself made an official educational commission or like a guidance agency for international medical graduates, whose entire purpose is to guide or streamline international medical graduates to get into residency. This commission is basically the starting and a very important point for every person wanting to pursue USMLE, no matter what country they are from outside the US. Okay. Now the third term, LORs, letters of recommendation. We see people using letters of recommendation to get into jobs, right? Well, in this process, it is mandatory to get letters of recommendation. When applying for residency, you need 3 as a minimum and maximum is 4. Where do you get these LORs from? It can be from any medical professional. It can be from a US or a non-US doctor. But for obvious reasons, US LORs carry more weight because they want to see that you have worked in the US and you know how the American medical system works. Getting an LOR from an Indian professor wouldn't help you as much because this process itself is in the US. Now, how do you get these LORs? You do an internship. There are basically 3 types of internships: electives, observerships, or externships. You do one of these under a doctor for a month or basically 4 weeks and you ask them for an LOR. Now, electives mean internships where you get hands-on experience with the patients. One of the criteria is that you must be a medical student, not a graduate. This is the reason people give breaks in internships, delaying their graduation, and they hence go for electives. Observerships mean you don't get hands-on experience, you just observe. This is for people who have already graduated. Now, externships means a hands-on experience for people who have graduated, but these are hard to get and very rare. It's simple. You work with them, tell them that you wish to apply for residency, and ask them if they can provide you with an LOR. They kind of expect that you will be asking them anyway. So it's not a very hard task to, go and ask them for an LOR. I'll talk about the whole thing in a different life. Now, the next word, program. Just how you select colleges or hospitals around India, for example, in your PG or even your UG admission. Now, in this path of USMLE, they are called programs. Programs basically means every hospital, university hospital that you apply to in the end of the process. Match. The final process of applying to residency programs and getting selected, etc., the whole final process is called the match. For example, if people that get selected, they say, I have matched into residency. Okay, so it for Indian students, it's basically like counseling. The next word, connections. Connections basically means people who know you personally and may vouch for you, saying I know this particular person, he might be a good choice for your position, etc. Basically, they put in a good word for you. This can be for residency, electives, or research positions, etc. Now, this is because the US system prefers people with good work culture. But since you are from another country, they'll want to know more, like what kind of person you are, and the people that you know might. This term connection is usually seen in apps like LinkedIn, etc. Not just for residency, but they might also help in finding or getting to know the other things along the way. For example, you have a relative in the US who is a medical professional, and if he can recommend you to any internships or give you any suggestions, etc., then he is basically a connection. Now, that's it with the important terms. Let's jump right into the process. Now, if I talk about it in a broad perspective, the mandatory process goes like USMLE exams, ECFMG certification, application to the match with your whole CV, interviews, and the match. The first one, USMLE exams. So there are 3 USMLE exams: Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. Step 1 is for basic sciences, 6 subjects: anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, pathology, physiology, pharmacology, and including other few minor subjects like biostats, psychiatry, etc. This exam can be given any time after your second year. Step 1 is a pass or fail exam. They used to give you scores for the exam, but as of January 2022, they have changed it to the pass or fail exam. Step 1 is an MCQ based exam, which is an 8 hour long exam, 7 blocks of 1 hour each, and 1 hour of break. You can take a break in between each block, probably like 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but the total amount of break will be allowed for 1 hour. Now, the total amount of questions in each block is 40, so the total number of questions is 280 in step 1. Each question carries 1 mark. The passing score is 196. There is no negative marking. If you get above 196, you pass, otherwise you can give it again. Although, in the end, they can see the number of attempts for each exam. And also, since the exam is a bit costly, near to 1 lakh rupees, don't give it unless you are ready for sure. Now, let's come to Step 2 CK. Step 2 used to have, 2 exams, Step 2 CS and Step 2 CK. Step 2 CS basically means clinical skills. CK means clinical knowledge. Step 2 CS has been cancelled, so forget about that. We have just one Step 2 exam, that is Step 2 CK. Now, Step 2 tests your clinical subjects knowledge and your ability to apply that knowledge. Step 2 is a 9 hour exam. This one is MCQ based too. It consists of 8 blocks of 1 hour each and 1 hour of break. Each block will have 40 questions. So the total number of questions is 320 because of 8 blocks, right? The big difference is Step 2 CK is a scored exam. You will get a score in your results, and it's going to be more or less the most important score in your CV. Step 2 CK is different than Step 1 because most of the things are management or diagnosis or mixed steps of what you want to do in a clinical scenario, which is different than the facts of Step 1. Because, for example, in pharmacology, the name of the drug formula will not change, and the enzymes that are affected by the certain drugs will not change. So Step 1 is more facts, and obviously the facts don't change. But in clinical medicine, there's a new trial or a new way of managing something. That's how Step 2 is different than Step 1. Now, Step 3. Step 3 can be given after getting into residency. It's not mandatory for applying into residency. You usually have to finish it before starting your, residency's second year in the US. Now, this one is scored 2. It's a 2-day exam which has MCQs and clinical cases. Day 1 has 6 blocks of MCQs. Day 2 has 6 blocks plus a few clinical cases. Although it's not mandatory, taking step 3 is going to improve your CV because it shows that you have good clinical skills. So these are the 3 exams. Some extra points about these exams. Let's go. Where are exams conducted outside US? Step 1 and step 2 can be given outside the US. There are centers called prometric centers. They are scattered around the world where they conduct these exams. We have a lot of centers in India also. But step 3 is given in the US. There's no such thing like if I give my step 1 and step 2 in the US, people will consider me higher. No, there's no such thing as that. And when are these exams conducted? For step 1 and step 2, unlike NEET or any other post-graduation exam, these exams are conducted around the year. When applying for the exam, you can select a time period of a few days in which you want to give your exam. In that time period, they'll select a date and they'll just share that date with you. Basically, you can select a center, get your date fixed, go there and give your exam. Now, since this is an online exam, you will get your results online itself within a few weeks. Okay, that's it for the exams. Now that we are done with the exams, now comes the certification, ECFMG certification. After this certification, you are basically equally qualified to any MD in the US. So how do you get this certification? There's a criteria. You have to complete your step 1, step 2, and there's a new exam called OET, which is an English proficiency test, and your medical degree. After having all these, you apply for certification and then they'll give you the certificate. That's it. Now, this isn't mandatory. You can apply for the match without it, but it is recommended. Since there are too many applicants, every programs has some filters for screening the applicants. ECFMG certification might be a filter for some programs, so it is recommended that you get this certification done. Now, the next thing, things that are not mandatory on paper but are an accepted practice. The first one, USCE, United States Clinical Experience. It basically means clinical experience in the US. How do you get that? Using internships. What happens is you work under a licensed US doctor for 4 weeks, or a month in his specialty. It can be an elective or an observership or an externship or a telerotation. Now, elective is for getting hands-on experience, which is for people who have not graduated. Observership is for people who have graduated but they won't get any hands-on experience, they just observe. Externship, like I said, it is rare to get. It is hands-on experience for people who have graduated, or telerotations, where you have online experience. This was basically introduced because of COVID. This is not a must. The US clinical experience is not a must, but you need it for sure. It's almost a requirement, but it's just not in the rule book yet. Now, why do I have to do this? Some reasons are you get LORs, you make connections, and you get clarity. What clarity? Clarity about how the life in US actually is, how the work culture is, how the living culture is, and you can plan your further future. The next thing, research. The best example for research I can take right now is of ICMR projects. You might have heard of that. Those are a part of research. The other types of research are case reports, meta-analysis, paper publications, etc., etc. Now you can find research positions in the US as well. But why do you actually want research? Because you'll gain experience, and from the experience you'll understand if you want to pursue a clinical point of view where you get to treat patients, or both academic and clinical point of view where you get to treat patients and also conduct research. And you'll get publications, and those publications can be submitted later in the match, and you'll get to make connections. Okay, let's suppose you have all this, you have basically compiled all this. Where do I put all these? Your USMLE scores, your publications, etc., etc. Well, you apply that now. The next part, application to the match. Now, when does this start? So there is a time period where you submit all your documents. This time period is in September of every year. Now, what all do you have to submit? Your personal statement, mostly about 500 words about yourself. Then your ERAS CV. ERAS basically means Electronic Residency Application Service. In this ERAS CV, you put your personal info, name, father's name, etc. Your citizenship, then your education, then your experiences, basically rotations or jobs, then your research experiences, volunteer work, publications and presentations. These research experiences, volunteer work, publications, presentations, these three basically, if you have any, then you can put it. The next thing, LORs, which are a minimum of 3. Then your USMLE exam results, ECFMG certificate if you have it, diploma and transcripts which you can get from the college, MSPE, which means medical student personal evaluation, which also you can get from your college. Now the interviews. After all the documents are submitted, they allow the programs to look and choose from its applicants. Now the programs choose and then send out invites to the applicants for interviews. Now these interviews were mostly in person before COVID, but they have been conducting it online since COVID. Apparently some programs have hybrid model too. They basically conduct both offline and online interviews. These interviews go on from October of that year to almost February of next year. The last thing, the final thing, the match. Now, after all the interviews, you rank the programs that you have interviewed at, and make a rank list. Now, what is a rank list? It's basically like a preference order, similarly like your NEET counseling. And this rank list should be submitted between the February end and the first week of March. Now, you have ranked the programs. Now, the programs will also rank you. The programs basically ranked all the participants that they have interviewed, and they say, I want this person, and if not this person, then the next person. If not this person, then the next person. Similarly like that. Now all these rank lists are dumped into an algorithm. What algorithm? This algorithm is by National Residency Match Program. And this algorithm basically matches the participants into the programs. Now, how does this work? There's a 5-minute video from the NRMP itself. Check it out. I'll just put it in the description, I guess. And after that, the people are matched into the programs. Now, after the people are matched into the programs, the results are announced. Now, when are these results announced? These results are basically announced in the 3rd week of March. You apply in the September of this year, and the results are announced in the March of next year. So in the March, the 3rd week is known as the match week. On Monday, you'll get to know if you have matched or not. And if you have matched, then on Friday, you will know where you have matched. Then that's it. If everything goes well and you matched, you get your results in March and you start your residency in July. To sum it all up, you have your USMLE exams, ECFMG certification, you apply to the match, you go for interviews, and finally the results. That's it for this live. This was the basic overview of the whole USMLE process. Thank you.